Hey there, everybody. It's Christopher. Thank you for tuning in to a video on my new channel, the Jazz Traveler Podcast. Today, I wanted to talk quickly about some updates on my grand piano, and I wanted to talk about jazz really quickly. So, let's get into it. First, my grand piano, I'm going to make a few changes. I would call them upgrades, but there's also some maintenance involved. So first, let's talk about the maintenance. So I bought the piano used from a private owner, and I got a great price on it, but it does need some maintenance. The biggest thing would be the strings. The strings are not in great condition. I mean, some of them are fine, but then others are corroded. So I'm going to have all of the strings replaced. And that will bring a noticeable improvement in the tone of the piano. Additionally, the keys need to be regulated. The action needs to be regulated. So when I talk about the action, I'm basically talking about when you press a key on the piano, um, several mechanisms are activated in order to go from you pressing the key to the hammer striking the string, right? Because that's the way that sound is generated. You have a string, and then the hammer strikes it, and so the steps in between you pressing the key and the hammer striking the string is known as the action, and it's pretty complicated actually. And so I'm going to have all of that basically optimized, and that will make it so that, from my perspective, that's not something that you can hear, but it's something that when I'm playing it, it'll make it just an optimized, more ideal playing experience. Additionally, I'm going to have like there's some loosening in some of the parts in the action. Some of the hammers are not like properly aligned, and so I mean I had a piano tech look at everything, and he knows exactly what he's gonna do, and so he's gonna just make sure that everything is like tightened and that the hammers are perfectly aligned. And that's also going to affect the tone because in order to have the optimal tone out of the piano, you want for the hammer to be striking the strings kind of like you want it to be striking them square, right? Like you don't want it to be too far to one side or too far to the other side. You want it to be going straight up and hitting all three strings at the same time. So that'll make for a big improvement. So I spoke about the strings, I spoke about regulating the action, I spoke about aligning the hammers and whatnot. I'm also going to have the piano just cleaned. And lastly, I'm going to have the hammers replaced. So now that's something that's kind of optional. I don't need to do that, but I definitely want to do that because the way that this piano is manufactured, they put kind of like the cheapest hammers that you can put because a lot of people don't really play their piano that much, or even if they do play, they're kind of like a beginner. And so, even if it's a great piano, and trust me, this actually is a great piano, but the hammers in it are not great. They're low quality. So that's a quick fix. I'm going to have the hammers and the flanges. So like, you know, if this box of Altoids is the hammer, the phalange, or I guess I should call it the phalanx, is the wooden stick. I'll just call it a wooden stick that's attached to the hammer. And so I'm going to have the hammer and that wooden stick completely replaced with better, parts. And then so that'll make for increased control over the dynamics, um, over the volume at which I'm playing, like forte, piano, pianissimo. It'll make the instrument much more expressive, and it'll allow for many more colors. So that'll be a huge improvement. And so that's basically all of the improvements that I'm going to do to the piano. I'm hoping to get to that pretty soon. All of that's going to cost $5,000, not cheap, but well, I spare no expense with my music, really. So, I mean, the only thing is I need to, have the money first, and I don't want to take it out of my savings, right? So, right now I've got like 3 grand, so I need the other 2 grand. Hopefully, I can kind of make that money in the next couple months, and then I can just, get my piano in the shop and get this all taken care of. So I just wanted to update you guys that this piano is going to sound a lot better pretty soon. I mean, it already sounds fine and everything, and I really appreciate all the comments. You guys really enjoy the sound of it. But trust me, when I'm done with all the maintenance and the upgrades, it's going to sound phenomenal. And at that point, I'm going to get some more mics and improve my recording setup. And lastly, I'm going to take Bach lessons so that I can study Johann Sebastian Bach, and that'll help me become a better pianist as well. So I've got a lot of plans on the way coming for my primary channel, which is the Julien channel that I have, all of my subscribers on, basically. And alright, so that's it for the piano update. So now let's just talk about jazz a little bit. And I guess I'll talk about, because people ask me a lot, like, how can I learn jazz? How can I get better at jazz? I find it hard and everything. And yeah, I agree, jazz is very challenging, no matter what your musical background, because jazz really, in my opinion, occupies a very unique space in kind of the music ecosystem. It's a very different approach. It's a very different philosophy on how you create music. If you're coming from like classical, um, there's no improvisation. Granted, that's not true. There are forms of improvised classical music, and that's kind of a topic for another day. But for the most part, when people, even people that have formal classical training that think about classical music, they're not thinking about improvisation. It's really not the focus of what they do. They focus more on technique. They focus more on other other things, right? And everything's written out, right? You're playing the same notes from one person to the next. If you're playing a Mozart sonata and then you hear another person play it, it's the same notes. Now they interpret it differently, but it's essentially the same piece of music, right? And jazz is very different because you're given the skeleton of a song, and I mean really bare bones, and then your job is to embellish. Your job really is to create the song, right? Because if the composer just gives you a melody and chords, you're creating everything else, really. And that creation that you're going to come up with is informed by your knowledge of the culture of jazz. So this is a really deep topic. I'm just going to kind of touch the surface as an introduction, and I think I'll make a series of videos more about how to approach jazz and how to get better at jazz and how to learn. But so essentially, your approach to the song is informed by your knowledge of the tradition and the culture of jazz, right? And you can approach it many different ways. Probably as a beginner, the best way to do it would be to pick a style that's well established and just try to keep it to that style. So if you're playing like, uh, let's say that you're playing Now's the Time, or okay, another song. Let's say that you're playing There Will Never Be Another You. that's a better song for this example. So There Will Never Be Another You has been played so many different ways, like a swing song. It's been played in bebop. It's been played more modern, avant-garde kind of style. You could play it bossa, like bossa nova, if you wanted to. And so I think as a beginner, the best thing would be to say, okay, I'm going to work on swing now, and then listen to some swing, big bands or some swing like small groups playing it, and then figure out how it is that they're handling the bass line, how it is that they're handling the chords, not just the notes that they're playing, but the timing of everything, the voicings that they're using. And this is going to be with your ear, right? You're going to have to listen and kind of pick these things out with your ear. But this is how you learn jazz, by figuring out what you like, figuring out how you want to sound, and emulating it at first. And then you can add your own interpretation as you become more knowledgeable about jazz. So yeah, as a beginner, I would say you want to take a song and then you say, okay, so I'm going to do it swing, and then so you work on, let's say, playing it stride, for example, on the piano. You make sure that your solo sounds like it would fit in, the 30s, 40s kind of swing style. And yeah, you go from there. Play with records. Playing with records is really great. Really great way to improve. But so maybe through my explanation of how to approach jazz, you see where the challenge is, because there are some really great musicians that are fantastic at playing all sorts of music, but improvisation is challenging to them because they don't feel like they have the structure that they need to be able to apply their skills. And the reason for that, again, is because they don't have the knowledge of the tradition of jazz, and they're just not comfortable. They're just not comfortable producing jazz on the fly. It really is challenging. It really is challenging, and emulating other artists ultimately is not enough. It's a great start, and that's where you should start, in my personal opinion. But you also need to, from day one, you need to be experimenting, seeing what you like, what you don't like, playing around with different ways to improvise, and you need to be building your own system of how you create music, and how you approach the beginning of the solo, and how you get out of the chorus, and how you go into the solo, and how you kind of handle, do you like how you handle creating motifs and elaborating them, how you handle doing extended lines, um, how you like to accompany yourself with your left hand. Do you like a walking bass line? Do you like stride? Things like that. You need to really get comfortable, and it takes a long time. Trust me. Jazz has taken me a long time to get comfortable at. Um, I'm still learning. I mean, I'm always going to be learning, always, because it's just such a broad topic. But I feel like I have gotten to the point where I have my own identity as a jazz musician. I can play a solo, and I think that somebody hearing it, like if they know how I play, they could identify me from others. I don't just sound like I'm playing like other people, but you can hear me playing and say, "Oh yeah, that's Chris." That's the way that he approaches jazz. So anyway, I'll make a series out of this. I'll make some more videos. That's kind of just an introduction. Why jazz is so difficult, because it can't really be taught. Like, it is taught. The tradition is passed down from generation to generation through you listening to records and learning from them and adapting them into your style, right? And also adapting yourself, into the styles that you're studying, so that you can learn from it. And that's just not intuitive for people. It takes an incredible amount of creativity. It takes confidence. That's another thing. You need to play confidently in jazz because it's not a technical endeavor. Yes, you can make it technical. Lots of people make it technical, but if you listen to a lot of artists like I'll throw some examples: Ben Webster, um, Count Basie. You can listen to Steve Swallow. You start to see that a lot of their solos are very simple, but their playing is very much um, they're confident. They project. All of their lines are expertly crafted. Their phrasing is phenomenal, and they have a clear mastery over the creation and execution of a solo. So anyway, I won't go. I guess I'll end it there. I won't go too long on this video, but hopefully that's helpful. I'll continue in further videos, and we can just have this kind of open, continuing conversation on how to learn jazz. So thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed the video. I've got many more to come. Have a good one. See ya.